Well, welcome to the latest edition of the Real Estate Rundown. My name is Andrew Jones. I'm a partner here at Wright Hassel Solicitors, and I'm really pleased to be joined today by a guest, my first guest, Anne Shaw, Executive Director at Transport for West Midlands. I hope I've got that right, Anne.
You did, Andrew, yes.
Thank you very much. So today, just wanted to have a chat with you really about transport and how that impacts commercial development. So my first question really is, how does a transport hub increase commercial development?
Well, quite a lot, really. Connectivity is key to any development, and particularly in a commercial setting, how you get people to and from where they might be working, but also to anybody who might be visiting that commercial development, whether it's an office or retail development as well. So without that connectivity, it's going to be really difficult to make that commercial development fly.
And how is accessibility important to commercial development in your view?
Really important, but the right kind of accessibility as well. So, we've seen the planning system not necessarily totally aligned with the transport planning system as well. And hopefully, under the new government arrangements, that might change now. Transport planning together with planning of development as well is going to be absolutely key. But we've also got some other real issues that we need to tackle, both on the commercial development side as well as in transport. And that is really about how we decarbonise the system, how we reach sort of net zero targets, and then also in terms of the profitability of the commercial development. Less parking space means more space for the actual footplate of any development as well, which means that you can earn additional income in that way as well. And really good connectivity through public transport, sustainable means is going to be absolutely key for any new commercial development.
So do you think that sort of the way of thinking now is around public transport, and rather than being sat in a traffic jam, people would rather get there more quickly and efficiently from an environmental point of view?
Absolutely. Yeah. So some of the things that we're trying to make sure that we're delivering as part of our transport strategy, if you like, is within the West Midlands area, is how we are planning for mass transit. So tram connections, bus rapid transit connections, new railway stations that we're currently constructing and building around local centres or commercial centres. It makes a big difference to be able to offer people a different ways and means of which they get to commercial development, any sort of urban centre where there's, commercial activity, and also congestion harms our cities as well, not just through people stuck in traffic and really lost productivity time, but also from things like air quality as well. And it also makes things like buses inefficient as well if they're stuck behind
Yeah.
traffic. More buses carry more people than single occupancy cars. So there's a real argument there as well. And we've actually done some research with some of our big employers across the West Midlands, and some of them, quite a few of them, have said that without a good functioning bus network where they rely on their employees to get to work, they would really struggle making sure that they're filling all of those roles within there as well. And that means, that some of those businesses could either fail or completely relocate to other areas where there's better connectivity.
So is that resulting in a bit of a resurgence for sort of town centres and city centres, which traditionally have been more connected to the infrastructure hub?
Yes, we're seeing quite well. Obviously, in the West Midlands, you've got Birmingham City Centre, which we're seeing quite a lot of development there. And if you look at where Curzon Station is coming in, the new HS2 station, that used to be actually where there was what we could refer to as the concrete collar, the inner ring road of Birmingham City Centre, which was removed about 15 years ago and really opened up. It was constraining the city centre, so growth in the city centre was poor. And then taking part of that concrete collar down has opened up that footplate for Curzon Station to come in next to Moore Street Station, where we've got one of the busiest bus interchanges, and we're also extending our tram through to that location as well. So it will be really a well-connected location through public transport, and there's lots of development that's now happening around that location that we're seeing. Lots of planning applications in, and along Digbeth High Street, actually, there's loads of development that is now going on down there. And it's a mix of housing, which obviously we need as well, alongside commercial development, which is helping to sort of regenerate and widen the city core.
So you've definitely seen an uptick in demand from developers wanting kind of land and opportunity around those hubs then?
I think so, yeah, because they've also when you think about the sustainability credentials of any sort of major developer, they are looking for ways in which they can reduce their own carbon footprint. Good access through public transport, in particular, around rail stations or other transport corridors, is really helping them to do that. And if they can use more of their space, as I said before, less car parking is actually more space for commercial development, which gives a bigger return. And I think because of the commitments that we've all signed up to in terms of how we decarbonise and what the net zero targets are in this country, there's more and more developers who are now keen to look at how they can provide that commercial development alongside transport investment as well.
Excellent. And how does that, you've obviously talked about how that helps certain economic growth, but are there other areas that it impacts on? I mean, jobs is an obvious one.
Yeah, so for most employers, I think they want good, easy access to their employees.
Yeah.
So providing good public transport links for employees to get to and from work as well is also a big requirement that we're starting to see. We've seen some of the likes of Amazon, who were sort of doing some big developments in this area. They're actually putting shuttle buses on that are taking their staff from key transport hubs to that location as well. So they're driving down the need for single occupancy car use and looking at different ways in which their employees can get to those sites in a much more sustainable way as well.
I guess it becomes a bit of a snowball effect as well. Once you've got those businesses coming into that area, then it encourages other businesses to come, and it just becomes a bit more of a general hub for business and people to work.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, some of the developments that I've been involved in the past, if you look at some of the other developments in Birmingham city centre, Paradise Circus is quite a huge development there, and it was where we had one of the busiest road networks, sort of busy trafficked gyratory that now has some fantastic office blocks and other, mixed use frontages on the ground floor level as well. And it's also created huge public realm improvements, makes the city much more legible in terms of people, the walkability as well. And, there was a sort of bit of an anchor in terms of taking the road network out, which was a brave decision. Everybody was really nervous about what would happen to that traffic. Well, actually, it dissipated and disappeared. And, I guess we've continued to improve the transport connectivity to Birmingham city centre with tram extensions and bus networks, etc. as well. But the public realm improvements is also creating a really great environment for some of those businesses. Start off in one location, the vision is there, and now we're seeing the rest of that Paradise Circus development being built out, with occupation coming as part of that as well.
That sounds fantastic. You touched on mixed use development, and interesting that how that's developed. There seems to be quite a mix of people living in areas that they're working in, perhaps more than in the past. Is that your experience?
Yeah, we're definitely seeing a lot of growth in city centres and big town centres. I would suggest we've been looking at some of the developments around Sutton Coldfield and other locations like that, Solihull Town Centre, where they're actually looking at how do they put the commercial space in alongside the living space.
Yep.
So you're also growing an audience. If you're looking at retail, for example, you've got your shoppers right on your doorstep. Yeah,
absolutely.
And all with the sort of thinking around the public realm side of things as well. So it's a really attractive place to live and attractive place to visit in terms of all the things that are available for you to do in those locations. And certainly with some of the retail space over time, you've seen some of the diversification away from pure retail to also like restaurants and bars and other things as well. So it becomes more of a visitor experience rather than just a retail experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So that mix of uses seems really crucial these days. It does seem that obviously transport's key to making a successful commercial development and mixed-use development. What kind of government support is there, both on a local or even national level, for that?
Yeah, well, I guess for us, we're in the luxurious position of being a trailblazer combined authority. So what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
So Transport for West Midlands is part of the combined authority. And within that, we also have teams that are unlocking land for housing development, developing skills programs. So, we're tackling with skill shortages for employers, but skills deficit for some people so that they can get the right training and get into good jobs as well. And then matched to that is also then the growth, so economic growth, which is done in a really inclusive way. We've got some high pockets of deprivation. We've also got some low skill base as well. So being part of a trailblazer authority means that we can focus our investments in all of those things in a more joined up way as well. And then working with our 7 local authorities that we cover, developing place-based strategies for certain locations. What's the employment opportunities through investment in commercial development? How can we support that by unlocking some of the land where we might have contaminated land that is quite difficult? So it helps to sort of remove one of those barriers. How do you then plan in your transport investments so that you can get that more sustainable connectivity? And how do we get people who live in this region ready to take up the jobs that are being created in those locations as well? And us together with Greater Manchester, part of that Trailblazer Authority, we're now in receipt of a sort of single pot of funding from government, which allows us to sort of have more flexibility in terms of how we pull all of that investment together. And of course, we work alongside developers in this region to look at what's the prospectus of investment, where we can sort of start to look at where the employment locations can be developed, where the housing can be developed, and how do we connect all of those things up in the most sustainable way.
It's having a really connected policy with these things. Transport on its own just doesn't work. You've got to be
Yeah.
integrated with all those other things.
Yeah, and the other things don't work without transport as well.
Yeah.
So transport isn't a means to an end. It's there to enable growth. It's
Yeah.
there to enable growth in the most inclusive way as well. So if you think some of our population, 27% of our population don't have access to a car. And in fact, some parts of the West Midlands, there's about 40 odd % of people who don't have access to a car. So how are we going to get them to places of employment? And good public transport and making sure that it's accessible and affordable is key to that. And having a skilled workforce for employers to access through good public transport is key to commercial development as well.
To growth of the economy generally.
Yeah.
We've talked about probably new infrastructure schemes a lot there. You mentioned obviously HS2, but are there other ways to encourage development, perhaps using historic infrastructure that may already be in place?
Well, some of the work that I'm actually doing with Network Rail is, and I think they're quite a large landowner across the UK, which I hadn't appreciated. But around some of their existing rail stations, there is opportunity for development, or around existing rail corridors where there currently aren't any stations. We're looking at what those opportunities are. And of course, you've seen New Street Station and how that was completely transformed from just being a pure train station to actually being a destination itself with retail and other commercial offers as part of that. I think there's an office block over the top of that which nobody remembers. it becomes invisible as part of that. So we're looking at ways in which we can work with the likes of Network Rail and others to look at wider development around existing transport hubs as well. And also how we can make best use of some of the land that we own to unlock both housing and commercial development.
Oh, fantastic. And can you give us any examples, Anne, that you're sort of working on? You've mentioned, obviously, Paradise Circus was one that, was a bit radical at the time, but is there anything else that we need to watch out for?
Well, we're still obviously continuing to work around the HS2 station, but I'm also in the process of building, well, not me personally, but obviously the team are building and extending our tram network through the Black Country. So, if you look through the history of the Black Country, particularly around Dudley, which was, one of the economic centres back in the day, there's now lots of areas of unutilised commercial land, and how the town centre itself, Dudley Town Centre, and through all the way to Briley Hill actually, and Merry Hill Shopping Centre, and I think the waterfront is another development there, which has currently got lower occupancy than maybe it should have. So we're in the process of extending that metro. It's great for the people who live in the Black Country because transport connectivity is not as great there as it is in other locations around the West Midlands, and it unlocks an old railway corridor which was redundant with the tram coming forward as well. But it's also helping to unlock some of the sites and make them open and available. So we're working with Dudley Council on their place-based strategy about how they can invest both in housing and commercial development and attract the right levels of investment across there, because that connectivity again is helping to bring either customers in to retail, commercial development or others, or the workforce to other kinds of development as commercial development as well. So that's one of the things that we're working on at the moment. And again, the place-based strategy is sort of in its infancy about what that unlocks, what are the sites along that corridor which we can sort of attract that wider development. But we've given the commitment and are on with constructing that tram extension, which gives the confidence. And that's the other thing, that if you lead with some transport infrastructure, you can also grow confidence in commercial development that this place is worth investing in as well.
Brilliant, and that sounds really interesting and fascinating, and I will keep an eye out for future developments on that. But I really appreciate your time today, so thank you for joining us.
It was great to see you, Andrew. Thank you for asking.